All right, we'll just wait for a couple people to come in. That's one hell of a loud chair, man. I got the one that wasn't loud on my end.
Well, I'm sorry, Ash.
That's all right.
I
That's all right.
apologize for that.
No,
Well,
it's good. It's good, man. So this is MX Broadcasting, part of Materials Exchange, MX materialsexchange.com. We are the digital way to buy and sell lumber. Come to MX Lumber, register. We'll have you on buying and selling for free to register. We only charge when you buy something or sell something. Great way to give information, get information, create transparency in the market. We think everybody should have it. Hey, this is Cutting Edge with Charles De La Torre from Industrial Forest Products. And again, Ashley Buckle from Materials Exchange. How are you doing today, Charles?
good, Ash. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. Just got back from that BCMC show, and we talked a little bit there in Omaha. Great event. Kind of wanted to bring up some things we talked about. Well, hell, first of all, you said it's been a wild 7 days, and it really has been ever since I was at the show talking to you. Between labor, logistics, basis going out, reloads being full. Uh, the people I talk to, both framers and component manufacturers of the show, have order files out so far. They're telling their salespeople, pushing the clutch a little bit to um, uh, telling salespeople, hey, back off because things are getting so far out and jobs are either getting delayed in certain areas and we're having to flex. It's creating a real interesting logistical situation for managing order file at production facilities. And I mean, man, you fall right in the middle because that's what you do.
Yeah, it's more than interesting, quite frankly. And I think you and I think Greg Riley actually mentioned this a couple of weeks ago. Bottlenecks as far as what wood that is sitting on the ground is now taking an extra, 10 to 14 days to actually get it out because allocation of trucks, whether you have contracts or you're in the spot market, is so tight right now. And that creates, a heck of an environment for the two people that you just mentioned, especially if they're supplying multifamily job sites. If you've got framers that have wood or need wood or product that's sitting in a reload and they need a quasi JIT scenario, they're having to pre-plan, 14 to 20 days ahead of time and making sure that if it does show up in those 14 to 20 days, they have enough, number one, they have enough room for it, but number two, they have the equipment on the ground unloaded.
Yeah.
Because now trucks are the I guess truck version of demerge, right? Is becoming a lot more prevalent, and they used to be a little bit sticky on actually trying to hit you over the head with it, but now it's a no-brainer. I mean, you pay me my $50 to $100 an hour, and I won't load any more freight for you. And it just is what it is. And in our business, that adds up quick.
Well, no doubt. So basically, we were saying 2 weeks now, a prompt load on the ground, getting it in 2 weeks is about where that's at, right? Hey, I saw Tom Mabry just from Jacksonville, Florida, just signed on. And Tom, it was good seeing you down at the show in person. Thanks for stopping by our booth. Man, we had a booth literally right when you walked in. You walked into our booth. I got to thank those guys over there for that because and the gals, they did a great job getting it set up there. So let's talk about a few other things that you and I were talking about. What a lot of the panelizers, component manufacturers, retail yards were telling me, we've got all kinds of projects sold, right? But here's what's happening. All of a sudden, one of these job sites, they get a call, the labor isn't there or something isn't there, and we have to flex over to push inventory to another job site. So it's creating an unbelievable – so business is good, right? That's the great thing. Business is good. But all these unknowns are starting to come in. Truss plates are hard to get. Labor – these guys were explaining to me how labor up in Minneapolis, then to Des Moines, then down to St. Louis, the price of it moves, and it's not people leaving a job for big amounts. It's 50 cents an hour, $1 an hour in some cases. So how do you handle as a employer and as a manufacturer, how do you handle that, Charles? I mean, that's got to be something every day.
Yeah, I mean, there's only so much you can do. I mean, human nature is that. Once again, I think it's total cost because we've had guys that have left us for 50 cents, but then again, they're working for a commercial landscaping crew that if it rains outside, they don't work and then get paid. Or they're working in some sort of utility contractor position to where, it rains, they don't work, they don't get paid. Whereas We work 5 to 6 days a week. We have plenty of overtime. We have a crew of about 5 guys that work 5 days a week from about 7 to 6:30 because they want the overtime. We have no problem doing that, and allows us to keep on schedule, which right now is, as you mentioned, not only difficult due to labor, but it's also a linchpin because the trucking scenario. You have trucks that, if you have contracts for, say, a radius, like we have contracts for about a 250-mile radius, and sometimes those trucks are planned and sometimes they just show up. And we got to make sure that we have the product ready for them to go, or we get charged money, which is always a negative thing, right? Because it's opportunity cost. And the other thing that I'd like to kind of touch on too, when you start talking about all these unknowns that historically some of these people in these industries have never had to deal with, it creates it highlights total cost, right? And a lot of people historically haven't looked at total cost as far as from point A to point B to a finished good. There's always 3 steps in the process, where historically, without those unknowns, you mentioned just now, the fact of moving raw material from one job site to another, well, that costs money.
Well, that's why I wanted to bring up the true cost with Charles.
All right, Vanna White, I appreciate that. But I mean, it's true though. I mean, historically, if you think about it, historically speaking, the lumber business has been derived off of price. Everybody's expectation of production and following through has been one and the same. But now it's different, and now it creates an opportunity for companies like ourselves to differentiate ourselves by actually following through due to our ability to flex and move and bend and be amicable to the market environments.
Let's talk about
big guys can't do that.
Let's talk about a real life example, because I had some guys and gals walk up to the booth this week, telling them about how you trim a lot of different shed trims and all that, right? And none of them had any idea that was a solution, right? And these are people that have been doing it for a long time. But I think the real thing because it's a good opportunity, is the 2x6 9-foot trims that you're doing in Southern Pine, right? That's a huge example that you have listed on the platform. Maybe explain to the true cost of that.
Well, all right. So obviously you have just the cost of the finished good. And let's take 2x6 104 5/8 in spruce and 2x6 104 5/8 in Southern Yellow Pine. 2x6 104 5/8 we sold last week in low 800s, delivered somewhere in the East Coast. Mm-hmm. Whereas we can deliver the same 2x6 104 5/8 in the Southern Yellow Pine for low 6s.
That's amazing. That's $200. $200 and what, $1.80 a piece or something like that. I mean,
well, if you look at it from that standpoint, yeah, it's exactly right. $1.80 a piece. And if you got 2,000 pieces on a truck, gives you a cost savings on a Southern Yellow Pine truck of $3,600.
Yeah, and then you take into that where some people buy a 10-footer and trim it and do all that kind of stuff.
And that's a totally different beast, and that's when you start looking at total costs. And I wanted to discuss finished good with finished good as far as per piece price or per piece per thousand. And then you look at all of the logistics that go into allocating labor to run a chop saw at a job site, or allocating labor to pick up downfall, which is a 12-inch piece or a 15-inch piece. Then you got to handle it, and then you got to put it in a dumpster, and then you got to pay somebody to haul it off. Now, at a job site, you got a lot of different stuff that's going into that dumpster, so it's going to fill up a lot quicker. But you also are going to put yourself in kind of a hamstring position if you have one person or 3 people or 4 people that are historically framers that run nail guns that are producing day in and day out, cutting 2x6 10-foot. Well, so you've got a true labor cost, you've got a material handling cost, you've got a downfall cost, and then you've got a yield issue that you don't really know the answer to because you have no one that's keeping track of it. So if you have one guy or 2 guys running these saws at a job site and they're off 1/8 of an inch or more on 100 pieces out of 300, I mean, that's a 30% downfall on top of the linear 1-foot drop that you get from trimming it back from a 10-foot stock length. So those are all things that have to be taken into consideration, because not only are you throwing that piece away, you trimming it back or handling it a 2nd, 3rd, 4th, or 5th time for blocking or what have you. You also have the labor. You also have the material handling with that. That creates a scenario to where it's a black hole, and it makes it very, very difficult to look at, once again, that total cost. Whereas the product that we put out, we hold a 32nd of an inch tolerance on everything that goes out the door. So our customers, when that product lands on a job site or a manufacturing line or whatever it is, that pre-cut has 100% yield. Plug and play.
Right.
Why is everybody starting to talk about modular manufacturing? A lot of the reasons: labor, bottlenecks in supply chain, bottlenecks in weather, and how much more efficient they are. Well, imagine if you had the efficiency in your back pocket to where you could plug and play 2,400 studs. All you had to do was move them around the job site versus having to cut them and then move them and then cut them and then pick up your downfall.
So
That's what total cost is.
one thing I know you've done too, and you've done this with a few people, you'll come up with that solution and you'll price it for them over uh, for multifamily people, especially over a longer period of time, right? When I say longer, 2 or 3 months in some cases, you'll price them that delivered to the job and hold that price.
That's correct.
Yeah, that's a great up. People should take advantage of that. And the other thing too is you also do special trims. So there's a lot of mills out there, and a lot of multifamily have these odd trims in these buildings. They're not big enough to make carload quantity, but they're big enough volume that people need them, right?
Yep.
So they'll either trim them themselves, but you'll do that and also give a solution on that on a lot of those items, correct?
Yeah, I mean, we've had guys that have called us for 36-inch header pieces and 2x10 and all kinds of stuff that we've solved problems for.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of identifying what that bottleneck is. And once again, if you had the ability to plug and play, it makes things a lot easier. I mean, prime example is the automobile industry. Everything's on an assembly line.
Yes.
If there was a faster way to do it, I'd imagine those guys would have figured it out.
If they don't bring it to your yard and put it together on your driveway.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They have all of their assorted needs in a straight line, and it just all goes together in a finished product.
Yeah.
Whereas the solution that we represent or what we can provide gives a framer or multifamily developer that same opportunity. So those internal synergies create a price of doing business that is a lot more efficient and effective to a bottom line scenario than if you do it the way it's been done historically.
So that's a real good situation for people looking to get a firm price on a 2x6, 104 and 5/8, 2 and better, or a different trim from Charles, and it's also paper wrap. So if it needs to sit at a job site situation for a bit. So one thing I saw at the BCMC last week and at the framing conference before was this conversation. A bunch of framers that have never done it before have internalized that lumber buying process and started putting wood in locations and have never done that before. Some have done it for a while and they've just ramped it up. Talked to a guy this morning, and he's a guy that puts wood on the ground at certain reloads all the time, and he called them, and his reloads are full, right? The reloads he wants to use, and they're saying don't send anymore. Are we in a situation right now where a lot of people are just building this inventory and putting as much wood as they can out on the ground because, like you and I were saying, they have this stuff sold in some cases an extreme 6 months out, and they're telling their salespeople to back off a little bit. Now they're just they're putting the wood everywhere they can right now, right?
Yeah, and I think Greg Riley also talked about this, or I think it was Matt. You have a loss factor that has to be taken into consideration when you're buying wood that far out. I think the volatility, actually, I know the volatility that we've experienced over the past 18 to 24 months has created a scenario or a perfect storm to where your non-traditional buyers are getting in the marketplace and trying to wrap their head around how do they make as much money as possible, or how do they avoid costs, right? Cost avoidance is a name of the game when volatility is present. Well, you avoid costs by sticking $1 million worth of wood at various reloads all over the country. Well, the problem with that is that if you have a job that needs something that's in a different location and your wood hasn't arrived at that reload, you also have an additional transportation cost that goes into that.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
There's a lot of variables that really need to be taken into consideration when you look at your value add, your supply chain, and your true cost.
One interesting thing this week too, I saw, and I hadn't seen as much of it in 6 months. All the news articles coming out it's a Wall Street Journal had another lumber up 40% from its low. Heck, on Breitbart they had a lumber story on there, and yeah. I'm like, so we're getting this whole thing where there's a weather event and it's going to be, and everybody's hyping each other up. Like, oh, did you read this story? Did you read this story? This story. Oh, this story's coming out. Everybody that's long inventory is going to be like, yes, this thing is going back to all-time highs again, because we're all product of our position. So, but I noticed that in the last week, right? And that kind of coincided. So you're getting a slight panic again on the buyer side again, that the fear of missing out type of thing, right?
FOMO is real.
Yeah.
It is a real emotion, no doubt. Uh, but cost avoidance is also a real emotion that I think a lot of
Absolutely.
people are paying attention to more now than ever, because you're not looking at $5 to $10 to $15 swings. I mean, you look at futures. What are futures up in the past 7 days, Ash?
So basically, we're at 750 now around. I haven't even looked at it recently. I'm going to guess probably hundred-ish dollars, and cash is still at the cash market. And again, 550 to 570 futures at 750, $180 basis spread. It's so far out in front. It's it freaks basis traders out a little bit because they thought they put a good basis on at $80. Now it's 100 and something. Can you imagine the margin call on that? So
I can't.
yeah, it's telling us something, whether business is really good, which it could be telling us. But I mean, we're going to a November expiration, in a month. That's a $200 or $180 basis that has to come in. Or what it's telling us is what it's told us the last 2 or 3 times, that somebody knows something that nobody else does. Well, obviously some people do, and there's going to be some kind of an announcement about something, right?
I would venture to guess an announcement is coming. You got too many outside variables that are coming into play in the market we're in right now.
Yeah, that's my guess.
Stumpage prices in Canada. You've got tariffs going up to 18+%. You've got various things that are, quite frankly, making swings extreme one way or the other.
Yeah.
And
nope.
The only
nobody's at cost of production anymore, anywhere in the world.
No, I would agree with that.
Yeah. So that's an interesting thing. Shed trims, anything new on that? Anything new on that front? Are you still in the doing the premium, cutting that recently?
Yeah, we're still. I mean, that's the only product we really cut is going to be a European premium stick for the shed trims, because what it does is it brightens up the inside of the building. That's why a lot of those guys don't use Southern Yellow Pine. So it feels bigger. It's like having white walls in a house versus navy blue.
Yeah, exactly. Or taupe.
That's not really on my color wheel. That's why I use navy blue.
You only go with the primary colors?
I'm good with that.
Well, cool.
Very elementary, buddy. Very elementary.
So you got a bunch of stuff up here on Materials Exchange today. You've got a bunch of your OSB up here, your 2x6. People should get a hold of Charles. Come on to MX, and that 2x6 104 and 5/8. The people that have got it, I heard it's a great product, and I like the fact that you talk about your tolerances, how tight they are, because there's everybody. You don't have a hole tech out there cutting it, so it looks like like you just basically did something with a samurai sword, right? It's a
no. We handle it stick by stick. Anything that we trim, we handle stick by stick and restack. We've got we furthered our automation piece where we've got automatic stackers and stuff, so it kind of keys into what we're doing as far as internal efficiencies. But samurai sword is not really my thing.
Actually, a samurai sword is probably a bad idea. I'm talking about a dull buck knife.
That too. I don't have those anywhere.
So, question. So, give me a little bit of update on this on the Southern Yellow Pine market. What's going on down in the Southeast right now on that?
One man, one opinion, man. That's all I can say. One man, one opinion. It's kind of crazy. I mean, 2-4s are extremely tight. 2-6s you can get, but not. I mean, it depends on if you want to leverage a relationship and you want to pay the price.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, we've had to leverage up our 2-6 stud pricing because our replacement cost has gone up so much. I mean, $30, $40 jumps on 2-6 historically this time of year is, quite frankly, unheard of.
Yeah.
But it seems to be the new norm. So who knows?
Are treaters buying yet, or is that just is that kind of moving up in sympathy of 2x4 just to keep pace with it?
I think treaters are in the market. I don't think they're in it as heavy as they have been. And I think you, Greg, and Matt touched on the fact that some of those guys have kind of hopped back in the market in the past 35 to 45 days. And, I mean, they're there, but I don't know what that's due to. I mean, you got retail sales that are up, and I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that retail sales have moved due to their cost basis, right? And I think everybody's kind of in the same boat. The historically high inventory costs are either averaged down or gone.
How about panels? What are you seeing trending in Southeast, the plywood and OSB? Because you're a big player in that.
Plywood's I don't know, plywood's touch and go. There's still a lot of demand, and all of that has to do with the fact that we don't have imports. We don't have the
Yeah.
import level that volume that we did or do historically. I mean, you think about a container from Brazil is $12,000. Historically, it's like five. So, I mean, you look at
You'll have to come
cost.
on the platform and buy. We got a bunch of Brazilian plywood listed from the
Look at that.
manufacturers. Yeah, I'll have to get together with you on that one.
That'll work. And then OSB, I mean, you've got producers that have extreme lead times. I mean, 3-4 weeks out. Some aren't quoting until the beginning of November or second week of November. It just depends on the product and what you need, really.
What about the thick board? I've heard that thick board still, like the thick OSB, the 3/4 TNG and all of that's still 4 digits now. Is that 4 digits still, or is that just
Yep.
below that? Yeah. Okay.
No, it's 4 digits. 19, 5/8 and thicker is relatively expensive, for lack of a better way to describe it. And it really hasn't had the volatility or downward pressure that your thin boards had, your 5/8, 7/16, or 15, 30 seconds. And I think a lot of that has to do with the cost of production and the fact that, your labor time per size is going to be, 1.5 to 2.5 times versus 7/16 or 3/8 or 15, 30 seconds. So mills are making more money on internal efficiencies running 7/16 than the latter.
So what's your prognostication going into when we're talking a week from now? When we're having this conversation. Is this trend? Are we going to be talking about the same thing?
I think panel markets are going to be flat to up. I mean, I think there's still a lot of takeaway, but you also have guys that are still reeling from the historic high prices because in retrospect, that was 30 days ago in August is when it kind of hit a bottom and
Yeah.
flowed upwards.
That makes sense. That's about right.
So you've got intricacies no matter where you go. It really depends on how quick somebody turns their inventory and how quick they were able to average it down, or if they were short and they just had to cover, or whatever the scenario is. Everybody's kind of playing different based on what their demand or takeaway is.
Yeah, and this logistics makes it hard to move from a point that traditionally, when you look at all the different OSB mills or pine mills,
Yep.
closer proximity is obviously always better, but sometimes you used to get those cheap trucks. They're not out there right now.
Oh, $800 for 100 miles in Carolinas.
That's
This morning.
$800 for 100 miles.
Uh-huh.
And that's probably a deal in today's market.
I mean, it wasn't a deal. I wasn't too happy about it. But, I mean, you kind of got to deal with you were dealt, right?
Did you try to get a little bit cheaper?
Yeah, but I mean, all we could do is talk them into picking up more stuff. So,
yeah, I got you. Well, look at
pay you a premium, go to work, right?
It was great. Do you have anything to follow up with? How do people get a hold of you?
Best way to get a hold of me is my email address, which is c.delatorre@ifpwood.com.
Gotcha.
Or 803-483-1300.
803-483-1300.
300.
803-483-1300. We're gonna have to make up a jingle for that one, man. Like the Empire Carpet one, or the yeah. All right, man. Well, look at I know. Don't worry. Give me some time to think about it. I'll think about that.
I can't wait to hear you sing next Monday. Are you gonna have a jingle? Is
I
Jory
will-
going to put it together, or is Mike going to symphonize it for you?
I will sing a jingle a cappella with 803-483-1300 next week. It'll sound good, man. All right, well, cool, Charles. Thanks for taking the time today. I know you're busy, and anybody that wants to get that 2x6 104 5/8 forward pricing on that, or however you want to do it, give us a call. Give me a call, and I'll hook us all up together, and we'll get something done here.
Sounds good, Ash. Thanks for the time.
Thanks. You bet. Bye.
All right, bye.